Do you understand the words that are coming out of my mouth?
Quiet, numbskulls, I'm broadcasting.
Can we get serious now?
One thing that did happen during the 60s was some music of an unusual or experimental nature did get recorded and did get released. Now look at who the executives were in those companies at those times. Not hip young guys. These were cigar-chomping old guys who looked at the product that came and said, I don't know. Who knows what it is? Record it, stick it out. If it sells, all right. We were better off with those guys than we are now with the supposedly hip young executives who are making the decisions of what people should see and hear in the marketplace.
Success in the music business begins with a dream, a vision. This podcast will give you, the listener, the insight and tools to turn that vision into a reality. Meet the industry professionals who work day by day behind the scenes, helping to make those dreams come true. Welcome to the business side of music.
On the show with us today, we're kind of all over the United States today. We've got one guy down in Florida. We got one guy in Wayne, New Jersey. And, of course, I'm here in Nashville, Tennessee. Joining us today is Professor David Philp, along with, I guess it's his cohort and his partner, and that's Steve Marconi is joining us. They're the authors of the book Managing Your Band, which we get a lot of books. I got to say right off the top, we get a lot of books that get sent to us. We read them, we look at them, and they're nice. They're really nice. You two really took, I think, what you created, this book, Managing Your Band. You took this to the 10th degree and then some, because the detail in this is pretty amazing. So, first of all, gentlemen, welcome to the show.
Thank you.
Great to be here, Bob.
How did you guys come about writing this book? What was your incentive to go ahead and really create what is one of the most informative bodies of work when it comes to the music entertainment industry?
Well, I think you just about answered it. I wrote the first 5 editions alone, and I was a member of a group on Epic Records in the 70s, given a shot by CBS and played all over the country. And what we lacked was good management. And no matter what we did, we really couldn't latch onto that. So we began to manage ourselves, which I believe is the cardinal sin. I believe when you manage yourself, it's the beginning, basically, of the end. And what transpired was the band broke up. I left the road, and I luckily latched on to a job at Syracuse University. They were just ready to form a music business program. And I got onto that and realized there was only one book, and it wasn't very good in its first edition. It was typewritten, actually, not typeset. It was David Baskerville's book, Music Business Handbook. And as I continued to teach, realizing that there was a need for this book, and also that I still believe, and today, Dave, you can correct me if you believe that I'm wrong, that it is still the weakest link in the body of people that are involved with artists. So I decided to write my own, basically from experience, and then it evolved into ready to write the 6th edition, and I just didn't have it in me to do it alone. And secondly, I wanted some fresh blood in it. So we were both teaching at William-Paterson University at the time. I'm just recently retired, and I asked Dave to come aboard. And since then, of course, Dave can speak for himself, but Dave has taken on some artists and began managing as well. So on this 7th edition, we have a basically now or current hands-on information that Dave has, of course, supplied to this edition. So that's sort of it in a nutshell.
Yeah, I'm really happy with this book because it was interesting because we had done the 6th together. And when we were going through, we had the opportunity to do the 7th edition. And we realized we hadn't covered at all, really, in the last edition, music publishing, and realized, wow, that's not only a hole there, but if we missed it, so many other, basically this book is for the DIY artist, the independent artist, and maybe for beginning managers. It's not for Scooter Braun, but it's for the college student who's trying to become a manager or that kind of person. And things like music publishing, which are so important and so at times complex. We were able to get that stuff in here. And one of our former students at the time was working at ASCAP. And she gave me a really great lesson on ASCAP, things that like this ASCAP 6.0, stuff like way advanced that is beyond just things that you know if you're just a member of ASCAP. And it was, we were able to incorporate a lot of that stuff in the book that's made it, I'm so much happier with this in the 6th edition because it's just much more in depth and covers a lot more things that people really need to know and understand.
And the first 6 editions evolved to be distributed by Hal Leonard, and I published it myself. This one we went with Rowan and Littlefield and just became authors instead of publishers and authors.
The book is managing your band, but it doesn't necessarily need to be a band. It could also be a solo artist, I would assume, just an individual recording act that's getting their feet on the ground and trying to get running. We talk about this quite often on the show. We've had different artist managers on various episodes. And the idea, the concept of artist management, I mean, there's different levels to it, but to really get started, I guess me playing devil's advocate, does it make sense for the artist or the act to be their own management when they first start? Is that a smart move?
Yeah, I mean, at the beginning, unless the artist, for example, has a voice that's the voice of angels, or the artist just makes these beats that are like Kanye world-changing beats, you know, your general artist just needs to get better, learn to do all these things and start creating a fan base. Like I've had people come to me, will you manage me? And the answer sort of is there's nothing to manage. You're not playing gigs. You've put up one song ever. You're not even close to being there yet. You still have to discover who you are as an artist before somebody swoops in and starts doing all these other things, but there's nothing to do yet. So it's a good question, but yeah, there's the Beatles managing themselves after the death of Brian Epstein, or Marconi's band managing themselves after their manager left and screwing it all up. And there's me just suddenly sitting down with the guitar and writing a song. Ooh, now I need a manager. That's completely different because with the Beatles, there's tons of contracts, tons of things, loads of money, lots of complexity. And with just you by yourself, you still have to grow and learn and get there. Bob, what is your opinion on that?
My opinion is that we're talking about creative individuals, and my thought process has always been this. I think there's two sides of the brain, that the one side is creative and the other side is business, or at least that's the way it should be. And in a lot of instances, I have found that those don't really cross-pollinate too well with all the acts that I've worked with over the years. The majority of the artists out there, at least from the ones that I worked with in the 80s and the 90s and early 2000s, were very creative individuals. And it was amazing the art that they could just conceptualize and turn into something that was either a physical or a digital product that we could enjoy. But when it came to the business end of things, they kind of all scratched their heads, and I either don't get it, or I don't want to do it, or I want somebody else to do it. And you just said it. When they're in those early stages, in that really kind of baby steps developmental stage, they have nothing that a manager can manage. So there is, I think, a fine line where the creative individual, as they get started, has to take a certain amount of responsibility, a certain amount of self-responsibility in managing their career as it grows.
And I think, especially if we're talking younger people and not like a 50-year-old person who just now is just learning guitar, but, you know, somebody in their teens, their early 20s, they also have to understand that this is a marathon. It's a years-long commitment. If you pick up a guitar or an instrument or, you know, a computer and you suddenly expect to be playing with The Weeknd, you know, in 6 months at Madison Square Garden and having hundreds of millions of streams on SoundCloud, Spotify, and everywhere, that is so needle in the haystack. And I always say you have to assume that's not going to be you. If it is, great, let's go for it. But chances are pretty good that that's not going to be you. And you're going to need to spend years doing this and committing to this. And I think if an artist spends a year, 2 years, 3 years, they learn enough and then they've put in some time, and it's worth a manager then putting in their time commitment, because a good manager is doing this for commission. So they're not coming in saying, you pay me to do this. That's not, in my opinion, the right way to do it. It's I will earn money based upon what you do and the work I put in. And I'm not going to work with you if you've never written a song before. There's nothing to do because I'm going to spend years with you and, wiping your butt every time you go to the bathroom. It's not worth my time yet. I need you to commit to this before I can commit to you.
I think the artist also has to figure out, before they get too far into this, what it is that they want. What is it that they're hoping to accomplish? I love what you just said. You cannot, in a realistic mindset, expect to go on stage, as you said, on the stage of Madison Square Garden with The Weeknd in a matter of 6 months. We all know, anybody that's in this business for more than a minute knows that things like that are literally 1 in a million, and it doesn't happen that often. And if it is a huge burst of immediacy, what you said, it's a marathon. If you do this as a sprint, you're gonna get your 15 minutes of fame, if you're lucky, on maybe a local or regional level, maybe a national level, possibly a global level, and then it's done, and you've accomplished nothing. You become that one-hit wonder or less. You have to really plan. You have to create a game plan so you know what it is that you're going to do and what you're going to be and how you're going to get there. And that's, I think, where this self-management comes in. Am I right? Yeah. I talked to somebody, one of our former students at William Patterson, who works for Sony now. And she was telling me that this is a year or so ago. They had signed an artist who had blown up on TikTok with one song. And so whichever Sony label signed the artist, and then the artist really wasn't ready. Basically the artist had no idea what to do next. And I think the label had to find a manager. The artist had never played live. They literally just made this song and it blew up on TikTok, and it was one song. And now, can you build a career on one song? You need a lot of people around you to basically do all the heavy lifting, because this person had no idea what to do and expected the label to do everything. We've had Julie Greenwald, who's the COO of Atlantic Records, come in. Her whole thing is, if we're going to sign you, if we're going to work with you, you need to work harder than us. And that's one complaint that a lot of people in the industry have, is that the artists do not work hard enough. And Ed Sheeran works 24/7, but a lot of artists like this person I'm talking about who's signed with TikTok, they thought everybody else was going to do everything and just tell me where to go and I'll be there, and that's not how it is, On the show with us today, Steve Marconi, who's in Miami, Florida, sunny Miami, Florida, let's say, and Dr. David Philp, who's in Wayne, New Jersey.
Hey, this is Trey Bruce, and I'm in the studio with Bob and Adam. Bob and John. Jesus Christ. Hey, this is Trey Bruce, and I'm in the studio with John and Bob, and I'm doing a podcast, The Business Side of Music. Tune in.
You're listening to The Business Side of Music.
Hi, everyone. I'm Larry Butler, and I want to send you a free digital copy of my new book, The Singer-Songwriter Rulebook, 101 Ways to Help You Improve Your Chances of Success. That's right. Everything you need to know to launch your career as a singer-songwriter, all based on my 40 years in the live performance arena. And believe me, I've seen it all. In my book, you'll find the 10 things you have to deal with before even thinking about becoming a singer-songwriter performer. You'll also learn about the 5 things every singer-songwriter can do this weekend to make their live show better. 5 things I can guarantee that you are not doing already. Plus, there's tips on songwriting and staging, photo and video shoots, publishing, merch, dozens of other topics. All written for people who don't particularly like to read. And again, it's free. Just go to the Business Side of Music website homepage and look for my book cover. Click on it, and a free digital copy of my book will be yours. I'm Larry Butler, and I approve of this message.
As a musician, you have a dream, that vision of what success looks like for you. Though it's not only about the money, money is part of it. Whether you've been extremely successful or you're just striving to maintain a regular cash flow, you need a plan. Money Concepts can help you develop a customized plan to achieve the financial stability and success you want. For over 40 years, Money Concepts has been providing holistic financial planning services to individuals, families, and business owners. As an independent firm, Money Concepts and their associates are committed to always represent the best interest of the client. It's really about a committed, benevolent interest in them personally. This independence, coupled with that committed, benevolent interest, means they represent you, the client, not a product supplier. It's not about selling products, it's about helping you achieve success. To learn how this can benefit you, contact my buddy, John Adams with Money Concepts at 737-867-9309. That's 737-867-9309. You can also email John at jadams@moneyconcepts.com.
You're listening to the business side of music.
Let's move on to the next thing, because I think when it comes to an artist, well, let me ask you this, Steve, you had the history of being in a band, you were out there, you experienced it. When you were doing it at that time, was it everything that you thought it was going to be? Did it turn out more? Was it a headache for you? Obviously, I'm assuming it was a learning experience.
It was an experience in schizophrenia, because you had all the ties on the side of the stage telling you you're great and you're opening up for Jimi Hendrix, let's say, which I did. And you do that every weekend. You're playing in front of 10, 20, 30, 8,000 people. And then Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, you got to go back to these bars with 200 people, and you got to earn some money, because you certainly by the time the road expenses came and you're getting maybe union scale, but not much more as an opening act, you really become schizophrenic, because you come up all pumped, and then you're there Tuesday and the same guy's yelling at this other guy and spills beer and so on and so forth. What amazed me is that there were so many intermediaries that were involved with just even one performance that all had to be fed as well. And you realize that this is a small business in terms of who you know, but it's a huge business in terms of what you got to do. So I think that those were the learning experience that I had. And I think David's right, as we finish that subject, we have to look at this managing yourself prior to having any management, or like Jam Factory and the Beatles did, don't put us in the same sentence, managing after you've had a manager, professional manager. And those are two completely different things.
And then I think the other thing we have too is self-managing, and as you hopefully you learn things, then I assume you should know enough going in to try and find the right manager, because there's a lot of different types of managers. You have your artist manager and your career manager, but finding the right one, that should also be a process that takes some time. I'm going to assume you want to spend some time to interview these people and make sure they're a right fit. And by doing so, you need to know the tools going in.
Exactly. That's another question that the new artist doesn't know what to ask. Just there's a lot of 8x10s on the wall of this guy's office, and there's a piano in the corner, so he must be great. They don't know what to ask. It's another thing you learn after you've been kicked around and out there. You know what to ask. We had a half a dozen managers of reputation that just weren't going to work out. There was no question that were interested in us.
David, do you think that the person who is having some success on TikTok, and we hear a lot about that, that somebody that's had 1 million streams or they have 100,000 followers, when you get to those numbers, that dynamic starts to get the attention of the record labels, and I would assume also maybe some management. Is that person, are they mentally and emotionally ready to make that step to find management, or should they really spend some time educating themselves a little more, or maybe a lot more, before they make that step?
Read the book.
Buy our book, Bob, and then you can answer that yourself.
Yeah, which we should say we haven't plugged it enough yet, and let's make sure we do that. Managing Your Band, which is in the 7th edition by Steve Marconi and Dr. David Philp, which is the book we're talking about here. Going back, when I started looking through the book, you have some really nice flow charts in there that really breaks a lot of this down. How did you come to that formula?
Well, that was just using the idea of systems and more questions to ask. And if you have a yes or no, just like you would be doing in any computer flow chart, any project management. And it sort of, I thought, answered just about everything that you needed to know. And remember, this business is so much different than when I started, where if you made it to a major label, that was your only reason to do this, was to get on a major label, and then you now are in the major leagues. And that was the avenue and almost the only avenue. Today, it's only one of many, many avenues if you are savvy and you are hungry.
It's interesting because you also brought up the concept of the TikTok person, you know, who's on TikTok quite a bit and finding some success. TikTok is weird. And so much of the music industry right now is run by algorithms, not necessarily people. And when you talk about, there are like 50 things we can talk about, but the artist development right now. So that's sort of what we're getting into, the self-contained artists who eventually, at what point do they need management? There's artist development from their perspective where on their own, they're figuring this out. They're going on to, maybe it's TikTok, maybe it's Reels, maybe it's YouTube Shorts, or maybe it's Snapchat. I forget what their thing is called, but they're doing that. And they'll have today one, we'll call it a TikTok, one video that's maybe 32 seconds long, and it goes viral, and I'll say relatively viral. Maybe it gets 500,000 views. And then tomorrow they do one and it gets 647 views. You can't build a career on that. And they're not making any money off of that. And they really didn't build any fans. One issue between, I have one artist who I manage who's done extremely well on Instagram. She's really, you know, she's building a very nice career because of Instagram, doing composing, doing a lot of writing for like National Public Media. She's been on the Kelly Clarkson show. She's written for music for a number of brands. So she's done very well there. And she has a very large following. She'll do an Instagram live and she'll get a really good number of people there. But then she'll put out music and it'll come out on the DSPs, Spotify, Apple. And that audience of hundreds of thousands on Instagram is not there when it comes to listening to the song on Spotify. So you have your Instagram fan base. That is not, and Marconi talks about this a lot, the active versus passive fan. You have lots of passive fans. Even when you talk about, I have a huge streaming hit right now on Spotify. It has 10 million streams. It's because it was on a playlist. If you look at your Spotify for Artists information, you can tell on that playlist yesterday, I had 30,000 streams, but I had 30,000 listeners. That means it was a passive listen. It was a playlist where a lot of people just had it on. The song streamed on that playlist, but that you did not build a fan. You got a whole bunch of streams, but you didn't get any fan there. It's the same thing. I might have a ton of quote unquote fans on Instagram, but they're not following me to TikTok, or they're not following me. They're not actually becoming a physical follower to my shows or anything. So there's artist development. There's a ton that goes on in terms of getting these people to show. Basically, I need them to go to my show and physically be there and buy my merch, buy a ticket. Very hard to do, to get them from passively watching a video in my feed on TikTok to actually get them to go to a show.
Literally taking that person who is a very casual, as you said, passive individual, turning them into someone who's aggressive, who's going to become a devoted, loyal follower, not just a fair weather fan, but they're going to become a devoted follower. Because you mentioned one thing, it's going to those shows, it's buying that merchandise. That's what these days is what's putting the money in the pockets of the artists. You're not doing it by streams.
We get asked all the time, well, what's the formula today? Well, there's no real formula, but we can tell you what you need to do. And it's simply just what Tom Silverman said 10 years ago. Take that passive fan and move them up the ladder to an active fan, to a fanatic fan. And there's tons of ways to do that, but that will get you success. That taking that passive fan and moving them up to the fanatic fan. And many times in class, I would say to someone, for instance, you got a show in a college town and you're setting up in the afternoon and you don't know who's going to come or who's not going to come. Well, what are you doing? What can you do? Well, you walk right out the door and all these college kids are passing by. What are you going to say to them? Come to my show? Or you're going to pay it forward? Or you're going to be creative? Figure it out what you can do to get that passive fan to come in and hopefully develop into that fanatic fan.
On the show with us today, Steve Marconi, who's in Miami, Florida, and Dr. David Philp. They are the authors of the book Managing Your Band, which is in its 7th edition.
Hi, this is Nancy Decken with Discover Sooner. Check out my episode coming up with Bob Bender's The Business Side of Music.
You're listening to the business side of music.
When you have a Korg synth at your fingertips, the possibilities are endless. Be it digital, analog modeling, altered FM, wave sequencing, or the multi-engine synth, Korg gives you easy access to a variety of features to help you get the perfect sounds quickly. Whether you're a professional musician or just starting out, Korg truly has a synthesizer to help you express yourself. Visit Korg.com or your favorite Korg dealer to get your hands on one of their products to create new music always. Korg, the official sponsor of the business side of music.
You're listening to the business side of music.
When we talk about your book, Managing Your Band, 12 chapters, by the way, with a lot of information. This isn't a small book. You two took a lot of great time and detail to create this 7th edition. How can people listening to the show, how can they go about finding this book? And is it a digital book or is it a hardback version?
It's an ebook. It's also hardback. You can get it, of course, on Amazon. And we might say that you're going to get all this information of 300 and something pages for under $35. It's not a $90, $100, $150 book. We didn't believe in that.
Yeah, it's part of our audience is college students and professors at music business programs around the country to have their college students read it. And as college professors, one issue I have had is people writing textbooks for college students. And I have one kid specifically who's in college right now. And these books are like crazy expensive. They're like, it cost us like nothing to write this book except time. And for me to expect a kid, like the hardcover version of this book, I think is like $149, but the paperback is $35 or whatever. And I tell everybody, buy the paperback. You know, I can't sleep well at night assuming somebody's going to spend $150 for this book, because to me that's highway robbery and totally different topic. But in the publishing industry for college textbooks, charging that much money for kids who cannot afford that, it's insane. You know, and asking, basically having their financial aid or go into more college debt to pay for these books. You know, it's not, I don't think that's right. So we specifically for this, you know, it's kind of like Springsteen doesn't want his tickets to be, for his fans to be more than, we'll call it $50 or $75 or whatever. We're the same way with the book. We don't want people to spend more than a certain amount because it's just not right.
Is there a website that people can go to get some more information?
There's several websites, but they can go to the Rowan Littlefield website, which will have the book there with a discount as well. And then also you can go to our Music Biz 101 and more website.
Well, gentlemen, I appreciate your time on this. We definitely want to make sure that our listeners know about your book, Managing Your Band. It's in its 7th edition. It's 12 chapters. It's $35. As they said, you can find it on Amazon and other sites, and we'll put those links on the show. And I appreciate all your time today. Thank you.
The Business Side of Music is the creation of Tom Sabella and Tracy Snow and is produced by Bob Bender. The Business Side of Music is recorded at Music Dog Studios in Nashville, Tennessee. Production sound design by Keith Stark. Voiceover and promo by Lisa Busan.